compared to people operating with the assumptions of the smaller base games, which all the people who play in Biko also do. I mean, they also play smaller LARPs. Biko has smaller events. They only do this crazy thing once a year. So, and the veterans who play Biko, like you'll see later on tonight when some of them come on, they themselves have begun to say that, you know, well, the Biko, the Grand Batal, is different than the way the other games play. And a lot of the skirmishes that we're going to have along the week are actually going to prepare us and ramp us up. So you don't have to come to the game knowing how to use a spear or a polearm, but if you have the ability to bring one, that's fantastic. If you don't, just be prepared to pick one up, because that sort of mix helps really create a much more tactically sound group. And last year when we had that perfect mix, our group was outstanding. And so many people were doing things that they hadn't done before, using skills that they just learned that week, and still we had an outstanding return just based on people just being willing to take that one extra step, jump forward, and learn a new skill. So the big thing for preparation, aside from bringing armor and bringing everything essentially that you own, is come ready to learn a new skill, not quite deciding what the Biko game is ahead of time.
If you don't look at the screen, then you can't tell when I'm trying to change it to somebody else.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So that being said, Brian, do you have anything that you'd like to add on top of that?
Like I said, I've been a sword and border for almost decades now, and I thought I'd come in like first year as a sword and border and teach these guys how to sword and board on the front line. And as a sword and border in like other games like Amtgard or Belagarth, you're kind of there to gain real estate and have, you're supposed to take damage, you're supposed to take hits on your shield and block pole arms, stuff like that, but you're still trying to advance so your poles and your two-handers can start doing damage. That's not how they play out here. They hold back and they just wait just outside of the other sword and borders, and so they let all the spears, the very long spears, do most of the damage. So you can still do a sword and board thing and hang back, but just make sure that you're not the lone wolf like I was my first year, and I would just try and and I would do other tactics, like I would try and crush the corners, where I would come in on the side of a line and try and bait 2 or 3 out away from the unit. They weren't falling for it. I would try and do stuff like that. If they ignored me, then I would hit 2 or 3 on my, but then I got speared like immediately, and I wasn't effective. So it kind of helps, but some of the tactics from the other games I've done, it kind of helps, but it, like Otis said, it's its own beast.
I love how the thing tells me when I start talking. It has a little sign that says, "You're an idiot. Stop talking while it's mute."
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's move over. Actually, Tom and Claire, do you have anything that you want to add about how the experience that was different from what you expected?
You can go ahead first, Beck.
I'll just say that it is a completely different experience from any other LARP ever, because just the sheer amount of people that are on there are just, it's crazy. Like, the adrenaline is so much different, and even LARPs up to like 100, 200 people will still break up into skirmishes. You cannot break up into a skirmish on Bikoline's battlefield, or you will get lost so fast. I mean, I remember one battle. It was the very end battle, the very end. Whereas a healer, I'm generally kind of a little bit different from the rest of the group. I'm not usually right there on the front lines, even though I plan to be a little bit more this year if I can heal. If not, I'll still be up there. But basically, it's just you suddenly when you have 500 people all go one direction, and then you're just sitting there like, where am I supposed to be? And then you're suddenly between two lines of 1,000 people. God, you realize very quickly you're not supposed to be there. So I would just say really keep an ear out. Otis is awesome at like making calls out on the field. So
And obnoxiously loud.
in a good way. So just make sure to hear for those calls and just keep to the person that's to your right or left and make sure you're with them and have a blast because it's super fun. If you get this really cool cohesion feeling going and this unit feeling, and you can't get that anywhere else, and it's really cool. So.
Yeah, pretty much that exactly. I mean, you've got to stick together as a group. If you try to break out in skirmish and try to do stuff like that, there will be fights in the woods where that kind of stuff is good. Where it's going to be a few skirmishes where they have that is off in the middle of nowhere that where that kind of fighting style will definitely come in handy. And they have quite a few like that. But as far as like the large battles, a shield wall with spears, that's where it's at, and that's just the way it works with a whole lot of people. And if you're a sword and shield guy, you're not going to be killing a whole lot. You're going to just be blocking a whole lot for the people who are doing all the killing, and that's just got to be something that you get into. And
it's fun.
if that's what you enjoy doing, that's what you enjoy doing. Me, I'm a protector. I enjoy just standing there taking hits and letting the people behind me have all the glory of killing everybody. That's the way I enjoy playing. But when it's time to move on, it's time to move on. And spears and polearms are definitely where it's at for killing people.
And one thing that I want to stress, I think that Brian brought up, is that there are units definitely at BICO who are students of the game. There are units who are pretty good at understanding mass melee, and then there is a bunch of other people. One of the things that makes the videos really tough to watch is that in any video you watch, you will see, you can decode it after you've been at BICO a couple times. You can see some units are very disciplined, and they aren't always the ones you think are very disciplined, but most of them are. And then there is other people, and they are writing their own book. They are having their own adventure. They are out there in the middle of thousands, actively doing nothing. Really, they're running around with bows and arrows, occasionally shooting somebody. And their total effect is very small. I do want to mention two things before we get too far along and we're at the 8:30 mark. So I want to go through questions about preparation and about your kit, what you should do, what you should bring. But before we hit the 9 o'clock mark tonight, I do want to have a quick discussion about archery, combat archery, and skirmishing. I'm really happy that Brian is here tonight because he does understand how you can effectively skirmish. I actually wrote an entire appendix to our tactics to discuss how skirmishers can be effective, but they have to, again, just like the heavy units, a skirmisher unit has to have a purpose, and then it has to coordinate. It's not like in some of the random LARPs you play in where the lone wolves are going to win the game. Even Ulfgar, our hero, is going to need an entourage in order to be maximally effective. And I want him to have that entourage, but I want them to be trained as skirmishers because skirmishers have one rule, which is if skirmishers are made to hold ground, they will die. They need to attack the thing that they're good at killing, whether it's monsters, specific targets, tactical elements, and then when they've killed it, they need to run. They need to not run up against a wall of shields and spears. They need to not, sit there holding the bridge while an army tramples over them. Everyone except Brian's beard is invincible. Is not invincible, and even the beard has to go where the rest of the armor goes. So that is one thing I want to talk about later on, which is I want to talk about how last year I think, had a small group that proved that archers can be effective, and I took all of those lessons and tried to put them into the tactics. I think I'm going to have to do some physical instruction this year. I don't know that we're going to have quite the same archery leadership we had last year, but boy, if somebody showed up and wanted to do it, it's a tall order. But I certainly have some good ideas about where they could start. So let's go to the questions groups and talk about preparation. So does anybody in the chat want to ask a question about your current preparation? All right, Mike.
Okay, turned off the mute. Good. I was thinking on bringing a bunch of javelins. Are they effective? Being something like a pelest?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm going to take a 50-50 on this one. I'm going to take Brian's temperature. The problem with javelins, as with other detritus, is a javelin is an effective way to spear somebody at slightly greater than 9 feet. And you only get to do it once. So if what you do is bring one javelin in one hand and a polearm in the other, and then really at some point kind of try to promise yourself you're going to come back around to that javelin, then that's awesome. Otherwise, they'd be effective in small clots, and maybe an archer or somebody having javelins or somebody having extra something. But as far as I've seen, the weapons have been effective. Anything that is effective in small amounts, and here I did the thing with the camera again. Anything that is effective, but only with ammo, is kind of suspect, because the tactics people who taught me tactics basically said that you can't reload a javelin back into your hand. You know, Thor's hammer is awesome because it comes back. You know, you can't, if you have a thrown item, has to be retrieved. And frankly, even though we had some great successes last year with archery, I'd say like half of the rest of their evening was retrieving their spent shafts. So my overall on that is they may be effective, but when you have an economy of all the things you have to carry onto and off the field, maybe for a siege, I'd want to like bring a bunch of javelins. But it's not something that I would say bring for a 3-hour, 4-hour engagement. But you know, maybe for a siege, I have to think about that. But I say bring them. I say make them. Don't eschew bringing a spear for making 4 javelins. But you know, if you can bring it out, if you bring them all, I'd say let's bring a bunch of junk onto the field and throw it at people. But again, when we leave for the battles, we'll make a decision about it, the economy of what we can carry, what we want to carry, and what's going to make us tired. Brian, what do you think about javelins?
I've seen javelins a couple of times be useful, but not often. I mean, I've used javelins in other games. I've tried to make them usable, but they're just very slow-moving. You can easily swat them out of the air. You might get an angle where somebody's not looking. You might get a shot, but it's like I don't think it's a really good payoff versus the amount of effort of making one, carrying one onto the field, and carrying it off the field. But like Otis said, if it's like a steady, not a lot of maneuvering kind of siege, to where that might be your only way of actually hitting somebody.